Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video on this channel. And today I have ranked every single console video game console that I can think of. And as you can tell, this tier list is already made. And let me explain why this tier list is already made, because when I was creating this video, for some reason I messed up and the recording just didn't work. Um, Pretty much the recording was just a black box, and obviously that's not very good content, right? So it's just an hour of me yapping about video game consoles in just a black box. And I already created it, so I'm pretty lazy, so I don't want to do the whole video again. So I'm just gonna show all these consoles, and I'm just gonna go starting from F tier and going to S tier, and give my reason why I think these consoles belong in these tiers. Now, first, the tiers include S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, E tier, F tier, and the never heard of tier, which is just all the consoles I've never ever heard of. Now first, I'm gonna just talk about all the consoles here. Don't know what this is. Don't know what this is, because there were some consoles that I have actually heard of, but I just don't have enough information on it. So, matter of fact, I'll actually turn that to slash not enough information. Okay. So, don't know what this is, 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 don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. I might no, don't know. Don't know. This is an attachment for the Atari Jaguar I've never heard of. This is the something 3D graphics or something. I just don't know a lot about this console, so I just put this here because I don't feel like I'm good for ranking it. Don't know what this is. Don't know what this is. This looks a lot like the Sega Saturn, but it's not, so I don't know what it is. Um, this is the I don't know what this thing is, but this looks a lot like a Sega Genesis controller. This is the very weird Google console that Google made a while ago, but nobody bought. Don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. Don't know what this is. This is the Fairchild something, but I don't know a lot about it, so I don't feel fair ranking it. I don't know what this is. Don't know what this is. Don't know what this is. Yeah, might. No, don't know what that is. I know what this is, but I don't know the name of it. I don't know what this is, but it looks like a Game Boy screen. I don't know what this is. I don't think no. Don't know. This is I don't know why it says Wikipedia here. Don't know what this is. Don't know what this is. I might not know what that is. Don't know what that is. This is the Sega Nomad, which is probably the one that I know the most about on here. I'll actually put that top here. But I just don't have a lot of information on it, so um don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. 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 This might be the Commodore 64, but I'm not sure. I know what this is, but I don't remember the name. This is the Megavox Odyssey 2, but I don't know a lot about it. And this is the thing I just said. Now we're actually moving on to the actual tiers, and now we're gonna talk about F tier. There's only four things on F tier, but what I ranked in F tier was the Atari 5200, 5800, not sure. But the reason why I put it here is because it doesn't have a whole lot of games. There's pretty much no games on it. Um, and like it's just horrible. I don't know how to describe myself, but it's just no games on it. All the games that are on it just suck. Um, and like, why buy this? Making myself like the NES at this point. Um, yeah. Now, next on the F tier, we have the PlayStation Pocket. Now, not a lot of I don't know a whole lot about this, but what I know it is that essentially, if you can hook this up to your original PlayStation, where you can play like little mini games depending on certain games that you put in, or even like save your save files, or like act like a mini memory card essentially. But there's like literally, I don't know why this is even on here. This is barely a video game console or handheld, I guess. By the way, this includes handheld, hybrids, and consoles. But um, essentially, there's like nothing on here. I don't even know what the mini games you can play on here. But yeah. essentially uses. Now, a lot like that is the Pokemon Mini, which is essentially just used to play little mini games that are based on Pokemon. So yeah. Next we have the top of F tier is the Atari Jaguar. No games, no support barely, and there's just nothing to really talk about here. And also, what is this controller? Seriously, like, dude, what the hell? Now, we're kicking off to the rarely used E tier, but I decided to include it in this because why not? The bottom of E tier, we have the Atari Lynx. I don't know a whole lot about the Atari Lynx, but I do know a bit. All I know is that essentially is just a handheld Atari console, duh, and not a whole lot of games for it that I know of, and this was around the time when the Game Boy was around. Like, sure, this has a significantly better screen than the Game Boy had, and even like later iterations like the Game Boy Pocket. I wouldn't say Game Boy Light. Well, actually, yeah, Game Boy Light, which is Japanese only, and obviously GBA. Um, but the battery life for this is also horrible. And why buy this when you just buy a Game Boy? Next we have the Nokia N-Gage. I don't know a whole lot about the Nokia N-Gage other than, it's the Nokia, it's half game handheld and half phone. So, and there's not a whole lot of games for this either that's really worth mentioning. Um, but this is one of the first handhelds that actually used a plastic casing, so for its games. But the only thing I really know this off of is that one Call of Duty port of the game, and it looks horrible, and it runs off of like 40p, like 40p. It's horrible, and 2 FPS. So yeah. Next we have on E tier is the Magnavox Odyssey. Um, Magnavox Odyssey was one of the first video game consoles to include interchangeable cartridges for its games, but problem is that the games for this was horrible. Now, for its time, sure, it's not that bad, but the games were essentially just like little white boxes that just moved around where you put like a faceplate on it. So these boxes, you have to move them to certain things on like the faceplate on your TV, but the game's just horrible. Next we have the Atari 7200 or 7800, not sure, but um, but it's the second to last Atari console, but it's not really worth mentioning. It's not a lot of games and just not that good overall. Now moving on to the D tier, with starting off with the Intellivision. Is this the Intellivision? Yeah, this is the Intellivision. I don't know a whole lot about the Intellivision, but it's a early first generation console, and I don't know a lot about it. I don't even know why I didn't put it. I don't know. I just know like I know it more than the stuff in the never heard of slash not enough information tier. But that's probably why I put it here. But I don't even remember why I truly put it here. This I don't fully remember what it's called, but it's like the Vectrix something. But essentially, what it is just a video game console. But instead of using bits and pixels and all that, it uses like these lines and like I don't know what it's called, but it's like they're like lines instead of like bits and pixels. But the games actually aren't that bad for it, for its time, but not good either. Now this over here is the I don't remember what they're called, but this was one of the this is one of the very first handheld consoles ever. And essentially just it's kind of like a Game and Watch in a way, but there's actually interchangeable cartridges. But the cartridges were so big that the cartridges essentially took up like a majority of like the space of the console or handheld, I should say. And the games, I mean, like you got Pong, but yeah, uh, you can also there's also some pre built-in games that you can play. But yeah, I should probably say that like what each these represent. So basically, FT represents like the bottom of the barrel, like some of the worst consoles of all time. E tier is horrible consoles, but not that bad. You know what I mean? Not as bad as F. D tier is starting to get a little better, but still bad overall. C tier's in the middle, obviously. Not too good, not too bad. B tier is good, but not that good. Not good, but not like best. A tier is fantastic, phenomenal consoles. And then S tier is the top of the top best consoles of all time. Anyways, let's go back to where we were. I think we're on the ColecoVision. I don't know a whole lot about the ColecoVision. Um, by the way, Coleco stands for Connecticut Lumber Company, I'm pretty sure. But anyways, okay console, not that good. Now this here is the dual Game& and Watch. Now this was the only Game& and Watch that was included, but this is just representing every Game& and Watch game. But essentially, the Game& and Watch is less of a gaming console, but more of a toy. Like you can use it just to pass the time if you're bored or something, and it does good at its job, and it is just little LCD screens, play little games. Now, next we have the Sega SG-1000. The SG-1000, its entire goal is kind of like a Atari 2600 choice, is essentially just to bring arcade games to the big screen, and it does good for what it wanted to do. Obviously, it is like a first generation console and Sega's first console, but it did a good job at porting arcade games as what the technology was at the time. Obviously it's not as good as arcade, not arcade quality, but you know what I mean. It's good, not too good. Next we have the Virtual Boy, probably one of Nintendo's most infamous consoles, as it is probably one of Nintendo's biggest failures, right next to the Wii U. Um, Essentially actually one of the first, consumer-based VR headsets ever, invented, and there's only like a handful of games. I'm pretty sure there's only 12 or 13 games releasing for the Virtual Boy, but they aren't bad necessarily. The only games that are really worth mentioning is Mario Tennis, that one kind of original Mario Bros game that I don't remember the name of, and the one weird like robot boxing game that I don't remember the name of. But they're pretty good. But the problem is that it's pretty for playing for like hours and like long play sessions, it could get kind of uncomfortable on your eyes and eye strain, and like it's just uncomfortable use in general because they don't stand. I don't know why they didn't just have a strap, but it would have made it a lot better if it just had a strap. But one thing I will say about the controller is pretty comfortable. I just don't really like how the start and select buttons are. It's just usually the start and select buttons are like off to the side, where they aren't easily pressed. But like it's like the same size of A and B. But yet, sure, I mean they're trying for a symmetrical look. But also with a console where you're not going to be looking at the controller for most of the time, it could be kind of inconvenient at times. Also two D-pads, because why not? Now we have the Panasonic 3DO. I don't know a whole lot about the 3DO, but hey, it has a Doom port, and Doom is a phenomenal game. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot of it, but it has Doom on it. Also one of the first CD-based consoles. Next we have the Sega Saturn. Ah, the Sega Saturn, man. The Sega Saturn released at a very awkward time. It released like only like a month after the Sega 32X released, and we'll get into that a bit later. But people were kind of confused when they bought the Sega 32X, like, ooh, I got one of the top-notch Sega consoles. Then the Sega Saturn came out like a month later, and like, what is this new thing? I thought I had the best thing ever. So then that led, to more people got confused with the 32X and the Sega Saturn, which led more people to buy the Sega Saturn. Also, it was just significantly more expensive than the original PlayStation because after all, the original PlayStation was only $299. So yeah, you may as well just buy the original PlayStation, and there are plenty better games on that than this too. Sure, you got Sonic, but like the original PlayStation, man, we got Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, all those games, fantastic games. Even the original GTA games. Anyways, now we're moving on to the um Sega Dreamcast, which is Sega's final console and one of the biggest console failures of all time. Um, Now the Dreamcast, it was extremely underwhelming with sales, as it was one of the lowest selling consoles during that PS2 era of games. I don't know what it's called. I think it was the fourth generation. I'm not too good with the generations of consoles, but um not a whole lot of games. The controller's awful. But at least it's not N64 standards. Um, but it's I don't know why you want to buy the Sega Dreamcast. Like, sure, you got like Sonic and stuff like that, but like you can also just buy the PS2, which is genuinely one of the greatest consoles of all time. So yeah. So what is this? What is this control? What is this control stick, man? I will say though, I do really like the shoulder buttons. It's probably one of the most, also probably one of the most, excuse me, one of the most unique controller designs though, but it did not work in their favor. Next, I don't know exactly what it's called. I think, but it's the N64 CD attachment. So when the N64 was, first releasing, it got a lot of criticism by people, by Nintendo fans, saying that, you know, the when like it turned out that the N64 was gonna have cartridges instead of the more popular at the time, and was the people were changing to CDs and DVDs because the DVDs were a lot cheaper to produce. They were um stored a lot more storage, a lot more power in them. With the cartridges, were much more expensive to produce, and a lot less storage and a lot less power in general. And when they came out with the N64 disk drive, I think it's called actually, yeah, disk drive, all of that was solved. But here's the problem. I've never heard of a single N64 disk drive game ever. Like genuinely, there's a chance that The Legend of Zelda Master Quest might go beyond the disk drive, but but The Legend of Zelda Master Quest is literally just Ocarina of Time, but inverted. So yeah, not very notable. Next, we have the Sega Game Gear. The Sega Game Gear is essentially just a Sega Genesis, but on the go. Like, I'm pretty sure you can just plop. It was either this or the Sega Nomad that you can just plop the Sega Genesis games in the console, in the handheld, and then you can just go and play the the frickin' Sega Genesis games just on the go. Here's the problem with the Game Gear, or maybe Nomad, I'm not sure, is that um its battery life was horrible. Generally one of the worst battery lives for any consoles. Yeah, granted, this came out in like the 80s or maybe early 90s, where like, handheld gamers were still pretty rare, other than like the Game Boy and stuff like that. And I will give the Game Gear or maybe Nomad credit. I'm not sure. I might be mixing those two handhelds up. But um like its screen was leagues better, 10 times better than the Game Boy screen. Generally, if you're playing a game on the original Game Boy, you could not see a single thing. Like, if you ever played The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening as in the original, on the original Game Boy, it is horrible. You can't see a thing. So yeah, yeah. But like, the Game Boy is just better games and stuff like that. So next, as I said earlier, is the Sega 32X. Now, the reason why I put this in D tier is essentially for the same reason as the Sega Saturn. Some people, could have done the same thing with the Sega Saturn, but inverted, people would have bought the Sega Saturn instead of the Sega 32X because, they got confused over, which. And it has a Doom port on it, but the Doom port was actually really bad though. But like, 32X, there's not many games on it that I can think of, other than Doom, of course. But again, with the same problem with Sega Saturn, people might be confused with 32X and the Saturn. So, fortunately, you get the top of D tier though. So, and moving on to C tier. This is the Sega CD. I don't know a whole lot about the Sega CD other than it's just a Sega Genesis attachment, but with using CDs instead of cartridges. Um, The only game I can really think of is on this game is Night Trap because Night Trap is genuinely is I'm pretty sure I oh whatever is I'm pretty sure is the one of the most controversial games of all time other than like Mortal Kombat or something. Uh because like yeah, I don't think I need to explain myself. I'm not gonna explain it. If you want to like watch a video on that, just watch a Night Trap video, just someone explaining it. I don't want to do it. But other game I can think of is Sonic 3D Blast, but other than that, I can't really think of much. But yeah. And next we have the Neo Geo something. I don't remember what the last name. All I know is the Neo Geo. So I'm just gonna call it the Neo Geo. But essentially, this console is literally just an arcade cabinet at home, right? And if you like at the time, when video game consoles were trying to port arcade games to your home, you think that this would be fantastic. But here's the problem: this in today's standards would almost like is almost worth $2,000. In the 90s or 80s, I don't remember when this came out. The it was $900, and that's for this is worth 2,000, almost $2,000 in today's standards. That's crazy. Like you may as well just be buying an actual arcade cabinet at this point, because an arcade cabinet is probably the same price as this as a Neo Geo. Yeah. And next up we have C tier is the Sega Master System. Um, the Sega Master System, I've never played on it, but from what I've heard from the Sega Master System, that it's a lot like the NES, but just worse. And I'm sorry to upset those 8 million Brazilian people who bought this and still play it to this day, but it's just not the NES. Sega, just stop. You're just copying. You're literally just copying Nintendo's homework. Also, talk about the controller for a second. This D-pad is horrendous. I'm sorry, but how can you use this D-pad? I mean, I've never played on the Master System, so who knows? It might be better than everything. Next, we have one of Nintendo's one of the most infamous consoles of all time. One of Nintendo's biggest failures ever. Up there with the Virtual Boy, as I say the same thing with the Virtual Boy. But I I I think that the Wii U gets way too much criticism. I actually kind of like the Wii U. Now, its games were actually pretty good. We got the Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess Wii HD, Port of Lego Dimensions, which was a good Lego game. Um, Other games too, like this is when game developers actually started more to push more like third party port. This is when Nintendo started to push more like third party games to their consoles. Um, yeah, so yeah, like we got uh, yeah, like Call of Duty and stuff like that. Not to mention the but Breath of the Wild, which is one of the greatest games of all time, also had a port of to the Wii U. So, yeah, one thing I don't like about the Wii U though is that um the gamepad is just horrible. Like you have to like look at the gamepad and look at its TV at times, like press the gamepad and whatever. But I think it gets way too much criticism. Like most people put the Wii U in like F tier, so I'm giving it a bit of grace in C tier. But you know, moving on. I keep on hearing noises. I swear. Moving on to B tier now, we have the Atari 2600, which is probably one of the most influential consoles of all time, as it really kick-started, video games as a whole. Like sure, there was video games consoles before, like, the Magnavox Odyssey, Nintendo's Color TV and all this stuff like that. But like when you think of the first video game console, you're probably gonna like when you ask an average person what the first video game console is, they probably think of the Atari 2600 because that's the only really first generational console that matters. Um, Now the what Atari was looking for with the Atari 2600 is to port over arcade games to home, much like how the Neo Geo was, except for it was a lot more affordable. But with that affordability also came quality. Um, as the arcade ports to the Atari 2600 was horrendous. Like for example, just looking at Pac-Man, I'm sure almost all of us has played Pac-Man once in our life, and most ports of Pac-Man is the um arcade version of Pac-Man. So, and if you've ever played the Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man, it is horrible. So yeah, but it's good enough. It gets it across, and after all, knowing its historical value, I mean, like, how can't I put it any lower than B tier? Well, again, how can I put it any higher than B tier there too? Next we have the PS Vita. PS Vita is basically just a PS3 on the go. You can connect this to your PS3 and just play all your PS3 games, or you can even get like uh ports of PS3 games to the PS Vita. And this even was like kind of relevant when like at the start of the PS4. Um so yeah. Also, I would like to mention that neither the Switch 2, PS5, or Xbox Series X is on this tier list. But if I were to put those consoles, I'd put the Switch 2 in either A or S tier. put the PS5 in also either A or S tier, and the Series X and S in the B tier. I'll put the Series X in B tier and the Series S in C tier. So yeah, they're not in this list, but yeah, just bring that up. Anyways, where was I? B tier. After PS Vita, we have the original, we have the Game Boy now. There is no other versions of the Game Boy on here, so I'm just going to include the original Game Boy, Game Boy Pocket, and the Japanese Game Boy Light all in one. Now, with the original Game Boy, the games are amazing, like Link's Awakening, amazing game. The Mario Land series, amazing. All those games, fantastic. But man, I might have schizophrenia, man. These noises. Alright, anyways, um, Game Boy Pocket. I forgot about they were talking more about the original Game Boy for a second. Original Game Boy. I understand that it came out in the 80s, but it is unacceptable how horrible and horrendous the screen is. Genuinely, you cannot see horse shit in on the screen. You cannot see jack shit on this screen. It is so bad. Also, what is this vomit green color too? You can at least make it like black and white, which they did with the Game Boy Pocket, but we'll get to that soon enough. But they even added a contrast style for your lighting situations, but that barely did anything. So like when you're playing a game, you can barely see anything. So like if you've ever played, if you've ever played Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening on the original Game Boy, you can't see a damn thing, man. Now, anyways, moving on to the Game Boy Pocket, which is essentially the same as the original Game Boy, but um, it's a bit lighter and a bit more. Oh, I keep on going back, but I forgot another thing about the original Game Boy. But it's uses four batteries, four double A batteries. But here's the thing, though: what really saves it is that its battery life is amazing. I mean, you can go on for days even without running out of batteries, and that really goes for all Game Boy titles too. Its battery life is amazing. Now, moving on to the Game Boy Pocket. Um, which is just included in this. But it's honestly just the same, except for it's a lot lighter, a lot smaller, because Game Boy Pocket, and and its screen is a lot better. Instead of using a vomit green display, it uses a black and white display, as I said before. Um, and the screen's just a lot easier to say in general. And now we have the Japanese Game Boy Light, which I have no clue why they only released it in Japan when they could release it in the rest of the world, which would have been amazing. But the Game Boy Light is essentially the same as the Game Boy Pocket, but it has a backlight, so you can actually see your games. The problem is the backlight's really bad, but like you can only really use it in like complete darkness, but you just play your game in complete darkness. And also the screen in general is just a lot better. Looking more, the background, like it's using hints more of blue more than black and white or vomit green, but it's just better screen overall. Which, those two iterations of Game Boy made it feature. Now next we have the GBA, or Game Boy Advance. Um, the GBA, amazing games, probably one of the most expansive game catalogs out of any handheld or even console. It just it's just great games. We have uh, Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, uh, Four Swords, um, Mario Kart Super Circuit. Uh, and do we the Super Mario Advance series? We don't think we even had original Super Mario Brothers title on GBA really though. All of them are just like kind of ports, I guess. Whatever. Great games. But the problem isn't the games on the GBA, but it's the handheld itself. Now, the original by the way, I'm counting the SP and Game Boy Micro all in this category. And the original GBA super comfortable. They should have just kept the design for the SP as well of the original Game Boy, but the original Game Boy, it's good. The button layout's good. It's comfortable in your hands, but the screen. The screen is genuinely comparable to the quality of the original game. No, no, I wouldn't say original Game Boy. The Game Boy Pocket screen, which came out like 20 or 10 years earlier than the GBA. And it's just horrible. You can barely see anything. Like recently, I recently played I played over Mario Kart Super Circuit recently, and I cannot see a damn thing, man. It's horrible. Genuinely one of the worst screens for any console or handheld. Um, Now, for the GBASP, though, there's two models of GBASP. I'm not entirely sure what their names are, but if I can recall, it's the 100 model and the 110 model, or maybe 101 model. I'm not sure. I'm just called the 110 model. But the 100 model, essentially, what the GBA-SP wants to do is just simply add a backlight to the GBA, really, and just have a great, better screen in general. But the 100 model is still leagues better than the original GBA screen. A great, good enough backlight, great screen. But then we move on to the 110 model with literal phenomenal, like perfect backlight, good screen even without the backlight. And you can see everything now. You actually see what you're playing. And like the backlight for the 110 model is literally comparable to like the Switch's backlight. Um, but yeah. So uh yeah, it's fantastic. One thing about the GBASP is that it has a rechargeable battery, but there's one critique I have that is it doesn't have a headphone like inbuilt headphone jack. Now you can just buy an adapter, which is my advice, or just not use a headphones. Like really, what's the purpose of using headphones for a GBA game? Crying out loud. And then we have the Game Boy Micro. The Game Boy Micro, it does its name justice. I mean, like, it is a small Game Boy. I mean, so small that it can barely fit in your hands. Another thing is that both the original GBA and GBA SP are both backwards compatible with original Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, which gets Game Boy Color soon enough. Um, uh, but the Game Boy Micro isn't, so that kind of brings it down. But the Game Boy Micro is even better than the backlight of the GBASP 110 model, so probably best backlight, but it's just super uncomfortable. Next we have the Famicom. Now I'm not Japanese or European, so but the Famicom, or also known as the Family Computer, is essentially just the Japanese and European version of the NES. And the NES was an amazing console, fantastic games, kickstarted the Mario Brothers series, kickstarted the Zelda series, Final Fantasy, all those games, fantastic. Um, so yeah, and it's basically just the Japanese version of that because I'm not Japanese or European. I'm gonna have to put this in B tier with the NES a lot higher. So yeah. Now we have the Super Famicom, um, which is pretty much same thing, the Japanese version of the SNES or SNES, but I prefer to call it the SNES. But yeah, it's Japanese and European version, and I want to talk more about the actual NES and SNES when we get to the North American version of it. Um, and one thing I want to mention about the Famicom is that the second controller had a mic on it. So yeah. Next, and the final thing on B tier is the DS. Now this includes all DS versions, being the original DS, the DS Lite, and the DSi. Um, and DSi XL, I guess. But the original DS, it was good, like great games. But the problem is that like the Um, one thing I will say actually about the DS before I get into its critiques is that it's backwards compatible with GBA games, but until we get to the DSi, which I'll mention later. But original DS doesn't have it it's way too bulky, I feel. It does make it a bit comfortable. It's way too bulky, but I also feel like that like whenever I close it or open the hatch, I just feel like it's just gonna break or just fall apart. So yeah. Also the screen's pretty bad too, like not very good backlight and all that. It's just bad screen, pretty dark. So yeah. And now we're moving on to A tier. And bottom of A tier, we have the Sega Genesis. Now, some of you Sega fans out there might be um flying your fingers in the comment section already, saying that this belongs in S tier. But this is my personal opinion. So, yeah. Anyways, Sega Genesis, phenomenal console. Great games for you. We got Sonic, Streets of Rage, the actually good port of Mortal Kombat. Um, I just like the console. I just don't think it's the greatest of all time, really. So yeah, and like I do have some critiques of the Sega Genesis, those being of like you have um like for example, um oh I can't I'm so stupid. I'm sorry. But it it just like it just can't describe it. Oh, okay, so like when like the Sega Genesis was first, launching and all stuff, I just think that it stockpiled its catalog with way too many games to start. And like when it came, to the end of the Sega Genesis with when they're releasing with the attachments like the Sega CD and Sega 32X, yeah, I already mentioned that in the 32X, so I don't want to mention it again, but yeah. And next we have the Game Boy, oh yeah, not the Game Boy Cow apparently. Next we have the Game Boy Color. A lot of people consider the Game Boy Color just another part of the original Game Boy series, but I think not. The Game Boy Color deserves to be its own console simply because it's just more powerful. It has a color display. Because that's the whole purpose of it. It has a better screen overall. Um, and uh, more powerful games, different games. Uh, and all that stuff. And don't forget that it's also backwards compatible with, original Game Boy games too, and some of them even add color to it. Um, Now one thing I will say about the start of the Game Boy Color's, life is that a lot of the games were just playable in the original Game Boy. Like for example, Tetris DX. This is essentially just Tetris, but it adds color to it. Um, but you can also just play that on the original Game Boy, but without color. So, yeah. Um, I also like the cartridges of the games because you can see the internals of it. Anyways, yeah. Moving on to the 3DS. I really like the 3DS. I know when the 3DS was launching was kind of around, the Wii U era, and Nintendo was kind of, going down during the Wii U era, but I just overall liked the 3DS. It had a lot of good so this includes all the different 3DS variants, but I'm not gonna just talk about them, just talk about it as if I'm just talking about them all because there's way too many of them. Um, But oh, I also forgot to mention the other DS variants. Oh, I just imagine the DS. So basically, DS Lite better because it's smaller. DSi a little bit worse, but it has a camera. Boom. And then DSi XL, it's large. So yeah, that's my explanation of the simple explanation of the other DS variants. Anyways, back to the 3DS. Um, 3DS and its variants, it just had a lot of good games. Like for example, you got New Super Mario Bros. 2. You have Oh, original DS, yeah, the first one too. You had a lot of ports of N64 games. Like for example, you have Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D. You had Star Fox 64, part of Star Fox 64. Um, a lot of those games. You even had Super Mario 64. D. Wait, no, that's the DS. I'm sorry, I'm stupid. Um, yeah. Also, along with the Wii, which I'll get into later, but that's an S tier. But the 3DS is also really good for modding. Like, for example, I was planning on modding my new 3DS XL recently, but I haven't really gotten to doing that. But the modding community is really good for 3DS, and they're really good. So yeah. So Virtual Console is pretty good too. But unfortunately, that was discontinued. Next we have the original Xbox. Original Xbox was just an overall solid console. Fortunately, not reaching up to PS2 standards because the PS2 is generally, I believe, the greatest console of all time. But the original Xbox, oh my god, I keep on hearing noises. It's scaring me. Anyways, the original Xbox, fantastic first-party games about Halo, Gears of War, all those games. Even third-party games were good. Call of Duty had ports, I think. All that stuff. But the one thing I will say about the original Xbox is that if you have an original Xbox in modern days, you have to really like take care of it because I've heard like its internals are pretty hard and it's also pretty hard to mod in general too. Um, but I've heard stories of it exploding if it doesn't have, proper care. So make sure you take care of your original Xbox. But the now another thing I will say, I want to talk about the controller for a second. Now the original controller, which is codenamed the Duke, is horrible. It's just way too big. It's really hard to reach certain like things on it. Also, like, there's just a big ass like Xbox logo in the center of it that's completely useless. Like, genuinely, it's a button, but if you press it, it does nothing. So there's no purpose in that other than to tell you that it's an Xbox controller. Um, its face buttons, A, B, Y, and X. It it was slanted in like the Windows logo, which was a kind of cool Easter egg, but trying to reach for the buttons really did kind of strain your thumb a bit. And also like the white and black buttons especially did that too, which was like right above it. Um, both of its joysticks used a both fundamentally use a convex and condent. I don't remember what it's called, but convex and other one. Uh, which was just kind of stupid. I will say though, I did like its triggers. It was pretty nice. They're pretty nice to press. Um, but yeah, but then they remodeled it, which is the one on screen here, right here. Which was just a lot better. So yeah, still adding those white and black buttons though, which I feel like they could have just removed. Um, anyways, moving on. I don't know why there's two PS3s here. I'm assuming one's supposed to represent the PS3 Slim and the original PS3. But the thing is that there's no other variants of consoles on here, so I don't know why they put both of them here. So I'm just whatever, just include both of them as just PS3. Anyways, we have the PS3. I am a huge fan. I'm a PlayStation fan through and through. A matter of fact, one of my first consoles was I think the PS2, maybe PS3, I'm not sure. But I I love PlayStation. But here's the thing with the PS3. I think the Xbox 360 is just better overall, which I'll get to the Xbox 360 soon enough because it's an S tier, but PS3, I just find that sure the first party games are great. We have stuff like such as The Last of Us, Skyrim, all that games, even Oblivion. But like the problem with the PS3 was that it was it was just the interior was just way too ahead of its time, way too complicated for like developers to actually make games for it, which made developers, to make games more for the Xbox 360 than the PS3, which is, that's why PS3 had just less games than the Xbox 360. So yeah, controller is pretty uncomfortable though, I must say. Yeah. Uh, Next we have the SNES, as in now the we're on to the North American version of the SNES. One of the first 16-bit consoles, but amazing games. They also kicked off some series like Star Fox. I don't I don't remember what other games, but whatever. We also have game like they had a Mortal Kombat port over here, but it was a lot worse than the Sega Genesis one. But we also have games such as Mario World, getting one of the best Zelda games, being The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and plenty of other games too. And we also kicked off the Mario Kart series and F-Zero, but F-Zero no one care, but Nintendo doesn't care about F-Zero anymore. So, anyways. Uh, this is a good console overall. I don't know how to describe it. One thing I don't really like though is that general controller like design is comfortable, but I don't really like how the buttons placed, Let's see. Next we have the original PlayStation. This includes the original PlayStation and the PS1, as in PSONE. But the original PlayStation, fantastic first party games. Um, we have fantastic games in general, I guess. Like for example, we have Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, um, yeah, and all that stuff. Even like the original GTA games, like GTA 1, GTA 2, GTA London. All those games, fantastic. And it's just a good console. I just can't describe how it's just a good. It's just good. How can you not like the original PlayStation, man? Hold on, it's fantastic. So many good games, everything. Next we have the NES. The NES. Um, it's just good. I know I've just been saying that the console's good, but like I can't really think of anything else. But like the games are fantastic. Like start off some of the biggest video game franchises of all time. Like for example, we have the Super Mario Bros. Um, Zelda, Final Fantasy, all those games, and we even have stuff like third party support too. We're pretty good. Um, we also have the attachments like the other stuff like the NES Zapper and all that stuff and like I guess Rob too, but Rob wasn't that good. But the NES Zapper was fantastic. I mean like the only really game that was good for it though was Duck Hunt, but Duck Hunt was a great game, so you know. But like other than that, it's a good console. Controller probably one of the best controllers and really popularized the D-pad design. Um, so yeah, it is a good console. Um, oh, I also have Metroid. Forgot about Metroid too. Metroid's good. Now we have the final thing on A tier. It's just A tier, right? Yeah, A tier is the N64. Um, N64, amazing first party games. Third party games kind of lacking, but there were some good like gems in the good gems on there. But first party games, fantastic. We have Mario 64, the first Super Smash Brothers game, Mario Kart 64. We have generally one of the best Zelda games of the time being Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. We have Majora's Mask. We have um and plenty of other games too. Uh, but for third party though, kind of lacking. However, there is some gems, which I'll talk about those gems. Those being GoldenEye 007, Doom 64, um, Quake, I think also had a port, but I'm not sure. And maybe Quake 2, not sure. But, um, yeah, great game, great console. But however, there are some critiques that I've said, like with the disk drive, as I said before, I think it was E tier that was in, but it's, um, the problems are is that I want to first talk before we get to the controller design, which trust me I will talk about. I want to talk about the cartridges first. Now, when the N64 was around, I think the third generation, not sure, but the original PlayStation, the Sega Saturn, but no one cares about that. All that stuff. They're they're moving more towards CDs and DVDs, which CDs and DVDs just held a lot more like storage were a lot more cheaper to make than cartridges and just had more power in general. And uh, with the N64, they made instead of using CDs and DVDs, they just took to cartridges, which definitely killed the N64 a bit more. But hey, N64 like generally as a console itself is like top notch, like genuinely the best like quality 64-bit when you're still on 32-bit, all that stuff. And just were amazing. If you look at the modding community years later, and then you'll know but it was limited by the cartridges because like as I said before, the cartridge is a lot more expensive to make, a lot less power, a lot less storage, and which just caused developers just not to make just to avoid it. And if even if they did port some of the games, like for example, Resident Evil 2 had a port to the N64, but they had to really like lower it down for like cartridges, so stuff like that. And don't forget about the controller. The controller design. What the hell is this controller design, man? This is genuinely one of Nintendo's worst controller designs. What is the controller design for? Three people with three hands, bro? Like, what is this? Like, sure, I kind of get it. Like, some games would use the D-pad. Some games will use the control pad. And if you're really weird, some games will use the um the D-pad and the joystick. But the joystick in general is just horrible. Like it's just feel like it breaks very easily, very nimble, very horrible in general. Other than that, I like the N64. games are phenomenal. At least first party, that is. Now moving on to the S tier, which means best of the best consoles, some of the greatest consoles of all time. And the bottom of S tier, we have the Nintendo GameCube. Um, I prefer the PS2 all the way, even the original, not the original Xbox. I'm stupid. GameCube is just good console, like amazing first party games. We have Mario Sunshine, which is my stepdad's favorite Mario game for some reason. Um, yeah, it is a good game though. Mario Kart Double Dash, which I absolutely hate, but it's my stepdad's favorite game, and it's pretty good. People consider it pretty good too. Um, we had The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, but that also released for the Wii. Um, but it's just good console overall. I do have a couple critiques, being that the controller design, other than for Smash Melee, was kind of bad. I don't really like how the main joystick and the C stick, or the C stick was just a lot smaller, along with the D-pad was kind of bad. But the triggers, genuinely some of the best triggers of all time. So, uh, you also have an attachment where you could, play your GBA games on it. So yeah. Next we have the Wii. I love the Wii so much. Um, like the Wii, generally one of the greatest consoles for modding and the homebrew, all that stuff. So good, best console to mod ever. But the backwards compatibility, it generally is also the console with the greatest backwards compatibility out of any console ever, with the GameCube. Um, its Wii Remote was good, but I feel like it was too gimmicky, which kind of killed it a bit. It was still good overall. Like for example, Wii Sports. Wii Sports is generally one of the greatest pack-in titles of all time, other than Breath of the Wild, but as in like an exclusive game. An entirely game meant for the pack-in title. But it's good overall. It One thing I do have critiques is that when the Wii was being made was when the uh Xbox 360 and PS3 era, which kind of where the Wii just which they were moving on to HDMI and more powerful overall, with the Wii still sticking to AV and more lower power options. But hey, that didn't really stop it from being one of the greatest consoles of all time. And now next we have the PSP. The PSP games are great. We have the God of War ports. We have yeah. Yeah, anyways, yeah. PSP was just a good console overall. Or handheld, I should say. It was essentially just, at the time, was a PS2 on the go. Like you have like GTA, it was only GTA game, GTA Liberty City Stories, which obviously isn't as good as GTA 3, or GTA San Andreas, and even uh GTA Vice City. It's still a good game overall. Like I have the mobile port on my phone, which is good. Obviously, the mobile port's a bit different from PSP, but whatever. It's just good. It's essentially all you can ask for a PS2 on the go, unless you want to do like emulation and stuff like that. But whatever. This is good. UMDs, no, not so good. I don't really like the UMDs that much because when you have a UMD in, it caught more. I would say that like the handhelds are more built for cartridges and game cards than discs, which was the UMDs. What the UMDs were. Um, when you're playing a game on it, you can really hear, it spinning and even it rattling inside your PSP. But overall, it's a good console, and this goes for all different variants, between the PSP 1000, PSP 2000, and PSP 3000. Next, we have the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch, amazing. Generally, one of my no, no, this is the only like hybrid console that really matters. Um, of course, you got the Wii U, but the Wii U kind of failed when it came to that aspect, as you have to have the main console around. And if you didn't, you couldn't really play games on the gamepad. But the Switch did that perfectly. Also, the Joy-Con feature was just amazing. Pro controller, probably one of the best, probably one of Nintendo's greatest controllers. Um, but like the games, but like generally some like it has genuinely, in my opinion, the greatest game of all time. Those games being Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So phenomenal, greatest games of all time. Um, and that you have amazing like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Even have the Nintendo Online feature was one of the great. I think one of the best subscription fees other than like Xbox Live and stuff like that, or Xbox Game Pass. My bad, not Live. Um, so yeah, this is good. Amazing mini games, third party games are too. Like you have Dying Light, stuff like that. And Dying Light, in my opinion, is one of the greatest zombie games of all time. So yeah. After that we have the Xbox 360. The Xbox 360. As I said this before, the Xbox 360. It. I am a PlayStation fan through and through. I've grown up on PlayStation. My entire life almost revolves around PlayStation. My PS4. But I just think that the Xbox 360 is just an overall better console than the PS3. Because as I said before, the PS3, just way too advanced for its time. Which caused developers to develop more games for the Xbox 360 than the PS3. Um, but there's so many good games on the Xbox 360. Like for example, we have Halo, we have um Gears of War, we have um we have Mass Effect. All those games are fantastic, but also got amazing third-party games. We got the Far Cry series, um all those games. They also has the greatest port of Minecraft of all time, in my opinion. Simply just for nostalgia. But it's just good. The controller probably one of the most comfortable controllers of all time. Um, and like it's just a jack of all trades. Obviously, there's one problem with it, which is the red ring of death. But in the modern day, that isn't really that much of a problem because you can just get the black version or even the later Model E version, which was released around the same time as the Xbox One. Um, did I even talk about the Xbox One? Yeah, I did talk about the Xbox One. Alright. Um. Uh. Where the black Xbox 360 and Model E version of the Xbox 360 just didn't really have the red ring of death problem as much of the white one, but or the original model. Um, but I will say though the modding the Xbox 360 is a nightmare. Anyways, now moving on to the second best console of all time, in my opinion, is the PS4. Just saying, there is a reason why even after the PS5 and Xbox Series X and even the Switch 2 at this point, that the PS4 is still getting games made for it. Now, sure, as of 2025, things are starting to slow down more. Still, this is just a jack of all trades. Any game you can ask for. Like I can name game after game after game. I don't want to spend hours just or even days just talking about the PS4. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. It has fantastic games like God of War, um, all those games. Again, I didn't want to explain it. It's just so good. Um, it's amazing technology, like so good, and yeah, it's just a good console. I don't know how to describe myself, but like, genuinely, probably my most played console of all time. And now. It's time for the greatest console of all time. The one, the only PS2. Now, PS2, I don't even know where to get started with the PS2, but I think I should start talking about the games first. Now, not only is PS2 the most selling console of all time, but the PS2 also has some of the greatest games of all time. Like, for example, we have the start of God of War. We have, as you can tell, I really like God of War. We have. Have you ever played Prince of Persia? It's a great game. We have, um, the GTA 3D trilogy. And I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I have to say we have the Force Unleashed games and even the original Battlefront games. Um, and I can just go hours and hours just talking about the games for the PS2, but I don't want to do that. Um, the console design is just sleek, nice, beautiful. Then don't even get me started on the boot up sound. It's so nostalgic, so amazing. The controller, DualShock 2, it's good. Essentially it's the same as the DualShock 1, but a little different internally. And it's just, it's amazing. It's just the greatest console of all time. And it's undefeated. So yeah. Anyways, that'll be it for my ranking of the greatest consoles of all time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and well, yeah, like and subscribe if you feel like it, and goodbye.